nature never tills. Show me a place in nature where there's tillage. Throughout human civilization's history, the tillage component of agriculture has been a real, I don't know, it's been a thorn in our side. It's been a real problem for a long, long time.
Hi, welcome to Beyond Labels. I'm your co-host, Dr. Sina McKella, and I'm here with none other than the amazing Joel Salatin, our favorite farmer. Today, Joel is going to be answering listeners' questions. And I just want to add, if you have questions, please email them to me. Please don't write them in the comment section. Please email them directly to me, handsoffmyfood@1791.com. And we will get to your questions. It's been interesting, Joel, since we're a farmer and a doctor combined, what's really cool is that the questions that have been coming in, about half have been on farming for you and half have been on health for me. That's great, right? So today we're starting with Joel's questions. Okay, so question number one. This one comes from, and I apologize, I'm gonna butcher the name. It's Erica, I think it's Juné. Erica says, or asks, if someone wanted to start a homestead and they wanted to take a course, which course would you recommend they take to get started?
Great question. So, if I don't want to sound self-serving here. I don't know what kind of homestead you're looking at, but there are really, really wonderful homestead books in the, in the history of this. The homestead movement really took off, back in the early 70s with the hippie Vietnam era movement that spawned a lot of that. And then it kind of waned through the late 80s and early 90s. And now, of course, and then it got another shot in the arm at Y2K at 2000. Suddenly, everybody was heading to the hills, and then it kind of waned again. Good times, and now it's really a tsunami now. Well, there is a whole litany of, there's Back to Eden. There's all these stuff from Elliot Coleman. There's material, archives, obviously, Mother Earth News, and lots of homesteading type of material. So I encourage you, rather than maybe taking a course, just start immersing yourself in that lexicon and the personal stories and histories of people who did make those changes and head either from an urban to a rural sector and start something. And now, if you want to do animals, I would recommend my latest book, Polyface Micro, which is taking everything that we've done at scale here and scaling it down to a homestead scale. In fact, I have a chapter in there on how to have chickens and rabbits in a Manhattan apartment. So, even down to, to that small. But I think rather than a course, what you're after is just immerse yourself in the rich lexicon surrounding this homesteading idea. And then the main thing is do something. Start. If you haven't made your move to a homestead, you can do some sprouts in your windowsill. You can start a vermicomposting bin under your sink. Learn to love earthworms. You can hang some, an herb, a little PVC pocketed herb tunnels, on your porch. Maybe you can have a beehive, in the back. The point is to start where you are. So many people, I think one of the biggest mistakes that people make is that they don't appreciate what they could do now. And they think, well, if I just had, an acre, if I just lived somewhere else, if I just had a different situation, then I could do this stuff. No. That's like saying, we've decided we're not going to have kids till we can afford them. Whenever somebody says we're not going to have kids till we can afford them, they'll never have kids because you can never afford them. And so what you need to do is just go ahead and start experientially, and you'll, I use the term fill up where you are. fill up where you are, and that experience is worth more than everything. So just start with something. Don't expect something will fall in your lap until you filled up where you are, and immerse yourself in this. Eat, sleep, and drink the homesteading material, the rich material that's out there. There's tons of books, tons of articles, and just immerse yourself in it, and you'll be way down the road.
Yeah, and I think go see a homestead, right? Find one that you like, or the principles of it you like, and go visit it. Go ask them questions, immerse yourself in it, like not just through a book or a course, but in reality. I think there's nothing that matches that, personal experience and that connection that you're going to get. And then you'll see it operating in real time. You'll see what you like, you'll see what doesn't resonate with you. Right. Or am I wrong on that?
Yeah, no, you're right, Tina. I mean, I ask you, you're now venturing into a garden. You don't have your, I know you guys are maybe still looking, not ready to say we're going to be here the rest of our lives, but you've already ventured out. You're not waiting for the perfect paradise place to drop in your lap. You've ventured out into a lot of things on your own, even though it's a very small place.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We've dabbled in a lot of things in the gardening and growing herbs, and some things I'm more successful in than not, but we just keep on trying. And like you said, we've been pursuing a homestead as well. We've flown to Texas to see if that's where we were meant to go. We felt called to go there. It wasn't. We went to Tennessee just because I thought maybe that's where we're called to go to. It wasn't. But we keep going, right? We just
Right.
you just
And I think
exploring.
and I think now think of how much now that about building a compost pile that you didn't know like 3 or 4 years ago when you started your first one. It wasn't very successful. I remember
my dog
that
ate it. So if you haven't read our book Beyond Labels, then let's add that in there. My dog actually ate the compost, and she got super fat, and I didn't know she was eating the compost. So I'm thinking, oh man, she's developed some hormonal imbalance or something. I'm trying to fix it. Little did I know she ate all my compost.
Yeah. So, these are all things that you just learn as you go forward. And so, experience is wonderful.
Okay.
All right.
Wonderful.
What about another question?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Next question. Okay. This question comes from Brian Ochsner. He asks, I farm with my family in Western Kansas, where we grow mainly wheat with some corn. And we've been farming using what I call plow, spray, and pray. So that's the method of farming they've been using. They've gotten decent results. I think it makes, let's see, I don't think it makes much sense nowadays. With rising prices for inputs and less reliable supply chains for replacement parts, I believe that going to no-till farming with cover crops is a better way to farm than the way we have in the past. Because where we farm, we only get 16 to 20 inches of moisture a year. Would this prevent no-till farming from working in our area? If so, what workarounds, if any, are possible to offset the lack of moisture?
Oh, that's such a wonderful question. So one of the breakthroughs in non-chemical agriculture worldwide was developed in Australia. And if you know anything about Australia, Australia is not known for being wet. And it was a guy named Colin Seiss. And he's really taken the world by storm. Again, you don't read about Colin Seiss, he doesn't get featured on the media, but what he's developed is probably as big a breakthrough as, for example, the development of electric fence 50 years ago. And it's a system called pasture cropping. And so he was a grain farmer in Australia. He had grain and sheep. He grew barley and oats and things and sheep in Australia. And a fire came through, and it burned all of his crops. It burned up his sheep. It burned his equipment, his sheds, his house. I mean, his entire farm. And I mean, this wasn't a small, it was like, a couple thousand acres. The entire place went up in smoke. And it was a family, he was like the third generation. He traced his history back to like 1820, and so this got him to thinking, I don't have money to recapitalize everything. How do I restart? And so out of that crucible of catastrophe, he developed a system called pasture cropping, where, if you're familiar with no-till, no-till generally uses an herbicide to kill sod, and then you plant into that killed sod corn or milo or wheat or beans or whatever. And so in the typical lexicon, when somebody says no-till, and I don't know if this question is assuming an herbicidal kill when they say no-till. So I don't want to read anything more into it, but no-till is about planting crops without having to till the soil, which we know is the single most damaging thing that you can do to soil, is to till it. Mm-hmm. And so the alternative has been this no-till, which is an herbicide-based system. But Colin Seiss, what he's developed is pasture cropping. We've done it twice here at Polyface. Once very successfully, once not very successfully. You live and learn. Again, it's experience, right? And the first time was not successful. The second time was very successful. And what he's doing is, instead of preparing the seed, to plant the seed with herbicide to burn down, weeds and sod and all that, and to kill that, so that an annual like corn or barley or wheat or something could come up in it. He uses animals. So what he does is he strategically comes in with, so say you've got a pasture. He'll come in with his flock of sheep and he'll graze it, and then he'll come in a few days later and plant with a no-till drill. So it's a drill that simply has little shoes in it, makes slits, and it drops seeds into these little slits as it goes through, the sod. Well, the sod, of course, the grass is wanting to come back, right? So right before the seed germinates, he comes in with the sheep again, grazes it real hard, and weakens. And so those two grazings back to back, faster than the grass wants, actually weakens the grass just enough temporarily to where these annuals, the corn, the wheat, the barley, the whatever, can jump up ahead of the grass. And then it continues to grow ahead of the grass, and then it starts to shade the grass. The grass acts as a mulch. So you never kill the grass underneath. It acts as a mulch, and the grain crop then grows on up ahead of it. And then you harvest the grain crop, and as the grain crop starts to desiccate, the leaves start to fall off, starts to brown down. Well, that emits light now into the understory. The grass begins to grow. So when you harvest off the grain, you have this nice 10 or 12 inches of grass, nice and green, back underneath the grain. He's got 2,000 farmers doing this in Australia. There are definitely farmers doing this in the U.S. And it is a true breakthrough. Now, you can't do this every year because what he depends on is the perennial, the grass perennial, to build up the soil enough to handle a grain crop. So grain crops tend to extract soil energy. Perennials like grasses and forages and clovers tend to replenish soil energy. And so he does this, he rotates around his crop ground, and he does this about once every 5 to 7 years. And actually, if we quit feeding grain to herbivores, beef cows and dairy cows, we wouldn't need nearly as much grain. And so the grain could be, spread out a lot more to be able to do this. And so to just say the answer is yes, this has nothing to do with rainfall. It has to do with biomass management. It's all about carbon and biomass management. And it can be done anywhere that a crop that has enough moisture to actually grow a crop. And in fact, this system saves moisture because you never till it. You don't open up the soil to evapotranspiration because you have that living mulch underneath that preserves the moisture, under the crop. So yes, you can, and yes, it works, and yes, it even works better in low rainfall areas.
Wow, that is so amazing. I was getting goosebumps as you're explaining that methodology. I mean, because that's one of the big things I read about. One of the benefits of regenerative agriculture, for instance, are the cover crops, right? Covering that soil. And if you look in different areas that have been untouched by humans, right? Nature doesn't like to be naked, right?
Right.
You wouldn't just have this bare soil. And so we lose a lot of moisture and such from bare soils, and we change the microbial content of that soil by tilling it and then by keeping it bare. So this definitely resonates with me. And now I'm even more convinced than ever, Joel, that I'm going to have to move to do a homestead, because we can't even have chickens here where I live in my HOA. And now I want to have these animals and do this system like you're talking about. That's a beautiful dance with nature, And I wonder, I haven't looked at this, but do you happen to know? So for instance, that type of farming, I don't even want to call it farming, but you know what I mean? That type of
it's actually called pasture cropping. Isn't that a beautiful name?
That's
pasture
beautiful.
Cropping. And in fact, I just got an email from Colin. I've been to his farm in Australia. We've done presentations together, and he actually just sent me an email yesterday. I think he's finally put all this in a book, and he wants me to do a blurb for it. And so hopefully the book, which will detail the methodology, the model, all this will be available, very, very shortly.
I think it'd be great to have him on the show, right?
Yeah,
have him talk about his experiences.
Yeah, I think it would too.
Do you know, have there been any studies that have analyzed the nutrient content of these plants that he's growing in this manner?
I have no idea.
Wouldn't that be interesting?
It would indeed. It would be. Now there's another kind of kissing cousin of this method that's been developed over a couple of decades, actually, at the Notill Research Center in Emmaus, Pennsylvania, which, if you know anything about organic gardening and farming, you know that Emmaus, Pennsylvania was the germination tray for the Notill research, the whole Notill team that developed Organic Gardening and Farming magazine and all that, and the Notill family. And they have developed special machines where you plant, for example, a cover crop that's also known as a smother crop. So imagine an annual that is so dense, something like rye and hairy vetch combined. It's just very, very dense. And then rather than either herbiciding it or tilling it in, see, here's the thing. Nature never tills.
Yeah.
Show me a place in nature where there's tillage. And so throughout human civilization's history, the tillage component of agriculture has been a real, it's been a thorn in our side. It's been a real problem for a long, long time. And so what Notill has done, they've developed actually some crimping machines where you actually go and imagine a cover crop that's real dense and let's just say 6 feet tall. All right. So, huge. All right. And you go in with this roller that has crimpers on it, and you actually roll down and crimp. So you're not tilling, you're not plowing it in, you're just rolling it on top, and then you plant your cash crop. You plant your cash crop into that. Goodness, sometimes it'll be a 6-inch deep mulch of this this heavy smother crop. So you get this smother crop, which keeps the weeds down. It holds the moisture in, and you can actually, I can tell you, I don't know that they've measured the nutrients, but I can tell you that the production of these systems just spins circles around any kind of conventional, chemical fertilizer tillage type material or production model. So hopefully those nutritional analyses will come on later because the soil profile under these systems, the soil profile is so much more vibrant.
Yeah.
Because you're not slicing up all the earthworms. And of course, with no chemicals, you're not chemicalizing the soil biota. Yeah. And so it certainly stands to reason that, intuitively, you would think that with the full panoply of soil biota, that whole microbiome in place, that the production from it would also be more whole, more vibrant.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. So inspiring. Oh, I love it every time you talk. I learned so much. Now, Joel, do we have time for one more question, or should we want to save that one for next time?
Maybe we ought to save that for next time. We're pretty close here, and because it's a question about marketing, and that could occupy one whole podcast. Just how do you I want to start a garden. I want to start how do I get local? How do I get neighbors to buy? That's a huge topic, and we probably better wait till next time so we don't overrun our headlights on this.
No, that sounds great. Okay, next time, so we'll pick up on right there. We appreciate everybody listening, and we appreciate all the questions. Joel and I do this podcast because, well, number one, we love to have fun, and the friendly banter is fun for us. But we're really here to support people and to encourage people. So we're here for you. If you have questions, please send them in. Again, email them to me, and I'll also include my email in the show description. All right. Thank you, as always, Joel, for sharing your wealth of knowledge. We love you and we appreciate you.
Oh, thank you, Sina. You're so gracious. Thanks for joining us, everybody.